All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining our webinar with ImageTag. With us today, we have Mary Miller, the Director of Sales and Marketing, who will be conducting this presentation. If you have any questions during this, please feel free to enter them into the chat or questions windows, and we will answer them periodically throughout the webinar. I'll also be recording this and following up with everyone, so if you miss anything or you have any future questions, you can ask me then. So thank you, Mary.
Thank you, Allie. We appreciate you guys taking the time today, and certainly we welcome everybody who's on the phone and joining us today for how to save some time and increase your efficiency with AP automation for Dynamics GP. I'm also going to throw in a couple of extra topics that you might find valuable if you're into the automation goals and process automation or digital transformation, or pick your favorite, choice word that's going around the market these days. But if those are on your plans for this year, then you're in the right place. We're going to take a look at a couple different examples of process automation and how you can save time and money using the same system that you have with GP, however, also adding the automation solution on top of that, adding document management process automation. So we're going to take a look at why any of this matters to begin with. Why transform? Why do anything? Well, the reality is that paper, although we take it for granted and it comes into our organization on a fairly regular basis, even though we have digital transformation goals, it comes into our office quite a bit. We have a customer who uses, a lot of paper. They get 40 reams delivered, 40 boxes like this delivered on a pallet every week. Every week they're constantly going through paper, just like many of you who are on this phone. And the reality is that the cost adds up. Paper can be very expensive, and not just the cost of the physical paper that gets delivered. Of course, 40 cases on a pallet is a lot. However, that may be a fraction of, or that may be more than what you use in your organization. But what happens with that paper, once it comes in, we tend to, for every piece of paper that we print in our business, we tend to copy it and or somehow duplicate it through, sharing or having somebody else scan it in and then print it again, up to 10 times typically for each piece of paper. And that's where kind of the value or the cost of that really adds up, is that paper becomes very expensive, not just for the root cost of ordering the product and getting it delivered, but also the fact that we print again and copy again and again and again. So what research shows is that the cost of the actual paper is about 31 times what you spent on the ream of paper that you bought at the store. So that can get very expensive very quickly, as you might imagine. So why we would look at any sort of document management or process automation is really, it stems from the cost of the paper. Now, add to that the fact that there are a lot of additional challenges that come with managing paper. There's the fact that outside of your accounting department and human resources department, probably legal and other areas of the business, there's rows and rows of file cabinets. In some cases, then there's offsite storage that you also have obviously a cost for, but also the distance that, things aren't always at your fingertips when they're not immediately accessible for you. And then there's some additional research that I'd like to share with you that you can see on the screen here that really would drive you to transforming your business and taking more of a digital and more of an automated approach. So what are those data points? Well, the reality is that 70% of businesses would fail within 3 weeks if they lost all of their paper records due to, fire, flood, or some other sort of natural disaster. So certainly we don't want to have to deal with that, but think about what that paper means in your organization and how would you recover it if something happened? How would you recover that information if something happened in your business? And then the upper right-hand side, this is one that, we probably don't have a line item in our budget for, but 40% of the average employee time is spent looking for information that's locked in emailing and file cabinets and offsite storage and all that sort of stuff. So every time somebody in accounting gets that phone call that says, hey, can you check on the status of that invoice for me? They have to interrupt what they're doing and get up and go down the hall and find the file. Hopefully it's in the file. If it's not there, then they've got to call whoever was supposed to get it. You guys can probably feel the pain there and can relate to that situation. So 30 to 40% of people's time is spent looking for information that's stored in file cabinets and emails and other sort of online storage, on-site storage. So in addition to that, paper is growing. The amount of paper that we consume in our business is growing year over year at the rate of about 22% on average. And if you have a larger organization, then chances are you're growing even faster than that. So the storage problem and the access problem and the managing problem of all of that paper is only going to get bigger, and you're going to have less resources probably to find more information as opposed to the other way around, right? Wouldn't that be nice if we had more resources to do with it? But normally it's not the case. Usually our people are stretched thin already, and now we're asking them to chase even more paper. And so the bottom line is, in the lower right-hand corner of the slide that you're looking at, is the cost of a misfiled document in a typical organization is around $125 per document. Again, not something you probably have a line item in your budget for, but tends to add up over time. And if you have to go back to the source to have that document reproduced from whatever it is, the vendor, the partner, the customer, or whatever, then the cost of that can actually be more like $350 to $400, because you're factoring in the human element, the element of time that it takes to redo all of this, not to mention the stress and the frustration that comes with that for the person who has to go have this document reproduced. And, you know, let's face it, nobody wants this, right? You need to have some better filing system than the old Office Space issue of having boxes and boxes and files cluttered. Nobody can find anything in that environment. And so it just doesn't make for a very efficient process. So the reason that we're having this conversation about why you might want to take a look at digital transformation, some of the reasons that if you're building a business case and the like, you're putting together this information, is so that we can also talk about how you can address those challenges. You know, what can you do with that paper? Well, when you work with QuickTag, there are 3 different steps that we're able to help you with, and that is that we can capture the documents. A lot of people like to do that, just make the paper go away, we call it. And that makes all of the documents digital, whether they're already printed or whether they're in some sort of, email or filing cabinet or network drive or anything like that. We can help you capture them all in one system. Certainly today we're going to take a look at how that capture experience integrates very directly and very nicely with Dynamics GP. And then finally, the automation step to really take paper out of the equation from as early in the process as possible. Because the reality is that if you're getting information delivered to your business, chances are some of those people, many of them probably, can actually send you that document digitally at the beginning of the process. For example, can we retrain your vendors to email invoices in instead of, printing them and mailing them? Heck, it saves them a stamp. It saves them the mail time. The value for them is that it's actually going to get them paid faster, potentially, or at least give you visibility into their payment status much more quickly than having it stop on somebody's desk or in a mail room and get, printed and sorted that way. So capturing the documents, making them digital, integrating with GP so that you don't have to think about it, especially for those users that are in GP all the time, day in and day out, and then automating that process as much as possible so that you're minimizing, the various stops along the way and places for paper to get lost or delayed. So QuickTag helps you capture, integrate, and automate your documents, any document, basically any process that involves documents. Today, however, we're going to take a look specifically at accounts payable automation and a couple other things that kind of go hand in hand with that a lot of customers find really helpful. So this time I'm going to demonstrate for you how that works, and we'll take it one step at a time. We'll walk through the step of capturing the documents, and then we will take a look at the integration. We'll talk at capturing and integration at the same time, and then we will take a look at the automation process. So let me just switch screens here, and I'm going to pop over to my demo screen here so that you all can see what's going on. And I don't have an audience view. Allie, can you just give me a heads up that you're in fact seeing GP on my screen now?
Yep, we can see it.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so we're going to take a look at the capture and integrate piece kind of hand in hand, and then we're going to take a look at the automate and integrate piece hand in hand. So from a Dynamics GP perspective, QuickTag comes to life in what we refer to so lovingly as the additional menu here. So maybe you see the additional menu in your environment if you have some other IS connector, some other sort of service that is available to you there. Well, that's also where QuickTag connects. So what we're doing is we're connecting GP with QuickTag to essentially, again, make the paper go away, capture documents, right inside of GP. We do that through the concept of what we call tagging documents. So I happen to be, I'll show you that in 1 second, I happen to be on a transaction that I have already tagged many documents to, and you'll see this here in a second. I pull up this list, and I like to use this particular transaction as an example because you can see I've got files upon files, I've got emails, I've got Word documents, I've got things that need to be scanned, I've got all sorts of files here. And the reason for that is that there is no limit to the number of documents that I can associate with a particular transaction in GP. Now, let me just pause there for a moment and highlight the fact that if you're, thinking to yourself, or maybe you've heard along the way that, document attach might be a feature that you'd consider that's native to GP. Well, attach, it's a very transaction by transaction relationship, and you have to know which transaction these documents are associated with. And by the way, they're storing them in the GP database, which, as you know, can put you in sort of resources and processing and bandwidth kind of issues, can kind of create some challenges around that. Well, all of these documents, while visible on this transaction in GP, are actually stored in QuickTag. So let's take a look at how some of them got there. We go back to that additional menu. We click Tag Documents, and we can browse out here. Let's just say we have a new quote, and because we want to associate it with this payables transaction. Of course, I'm in the payables transaction entry screen, so that's where I'm going to be most likely entering my payment information. I can just say that I've got a quote here. I can select it, and it's going to associate that document with this transaction in GP. Okay. Another way that I can do that, and a lot of people find this to be really helpful, is that they can come straight out to an email. Let's bring this over just a bit so you can see both of these things here. They can go out to an email and say, I need to associate somebody's message. Maybe they emailed me a document with a comment that says, hey, accounting, I need you to, send this to Bob for approval because, this is going to come out of his budget. Make sure that he gets the approval message here. So we're going to say email approval, and we're going to go out to this email. You can see this email that I've selected just has a message about approval. It has an attachment, of course, the invoice in this case that's being approved. I drag that email over to the QuickTag dialog box, and it says, would you like to associate that message with any attachments, of course, to this transaction in GP? And I say yes. So I'm essentially building a library of files that's associated with this particular transaction in GP. Now, again, I don't need to know which transaction this is because I can search and find these on any number of criteria in either GP or QuickTag. So I'm going to show you that. So let's just take a quick look here at our view documents list now, and we'll see that we have added a couple of items here down at the bottom. We've got a new quote. We can just right click and take a quick look at that document, of course, if we wanted to. And if we need to take a look at the email, we can certainly open that, and it maintains its native format along with the attachment to that particular email. So anything that you need to add as sort of backup documentation to this transaction, you can easily do right here inside a GP. But again, you see this is powered by QuickTag. This is part of the QuickTag connector. All of this, by the way, still part of the capture story, still part of the just make the paper go away. Okay, this is QuickTag capture integrating through our connector directly to GP. Now let's play that scenario out from a moment ago where accounts payable person gets the call. It says, hey, what's the, do you have that invoice? Is anybody taking a look at it? Do I, can you find it? Or I need the supporting documentation that came from the email approval or whatever. I can simply find it here in QuickTag. Let me just show you how that works. Go back to our additional menu, and we'll do search. And we can look in either the filing information, the metadata, the fields that populate out of GP and or QuickTag, or the document content. And this is something that makes QuickTag unique in the market, where we can come over here and let's see, I believe we bought some adapters there, which of course was not in our filing criteria, but it was in the body of the message. It was in the body of the document. So we're going to do a quick search for that. And what QuickTag is doing now, you can see this is a QuickTag global search, and I could have narrowed it down to what we call site or drawer. You'll learn more about those in a moment. Or I could look for everything in QuickTag. I know that I ordered some kind of adapters not that long ago. We need to order some more. Can you tell me who we ordered them from and about how much they cost? So me in accounting, I do this quick lookup for you, again, using the QuickTag connector. I find the document. I say, oh yeah, here's the one with the invoice. I can just right click, I can view it there. So yeah, that looks like what she's looking for. She probably just needs to order some more phone supplies because we're hiring some new people or whatever. And I can send that straight from my QuickTag connector, again, right inside a GP. So I can put the email in and send the files. So again, all of this is QuickTag connector, capture solution, make the paper go away, and be able to tag, view, and search documents that are associated with transactions in GP. Now, the real power of that, in addition to the functionality, is that you have this additional menu with the ability to tag, view, and search documents across about 79 different screens out of the box using QuickTag. So the value of that is that you don't need to, go buy a bunch of modules and a bunch of different add-ons to be able to manage this type of documents or that type of documents. It all comes in one system, out of the box, capture documents, make the paper go away. Okay, so we'll save that transaction. Don't need that one. Go ahead and close that for a moment. And let's take a look at what those 79 screens are. Let me just come over to my QuickTag view. So now I'm logged in as Mary, just like I was logged into GP. And you can see that on the left-hand side, I have this concept of site, which is, in this case, Fabricam, because we all love Fabricam if we use GP, right? And so out of the box, we connect to as many GP companies as you have with all of the related drawers that we attach to, or forms in GP, those 79 different screens across 9 different modules. We create a digital corresponding drawer in QuickTag so that you can easily find what type of document you're looking for. Well, we happen to know that we were working with the payables transaction. Of course, I've got a few of those favorited. PTE, of course, is one of them. So I can quickly go to my favorites. So if I had multiple GP companies in my GP environment, all of those would be selectable for you here. Or you can create additional sites for, say, another department in your organization, HR, sales, legal, vendor management, whatever the case may be. And then also create digital drawers that are associated with each one of those sites. So if we come here into our payables transaction entry drawer, all of the documents that we just loaded in GP are going to be available for us here. So it's just a matter of looking up the document. They're the ones that that's going to be the email. This is an expense report waiting for me. Here's an invoice that we attach to a document, and here's going to be another file that might not be an image. That's one probably waiting to be scanned. And here's another file that we did a drag and drop. Of course, if there was an email, that would be one that we would need to open natively in the email system as well. So you can see how easy it is for you to be able to find and share information in QuickTag, just like it was in GP. And again, all of these are stored in the QuickTag database. So there isn't, we're not taking up any GP resources. We're not storing them anywhere that might slow anything down in GP functioning as well. And you can also see that I've got a lot of different, files here across the top. So maybe I want to just, filter really quickly to Advanced Office Systems because that's my favorite vendor. And so I do a quick search, and it's going to, I put that in filter instead of search, sorry about that. I can do a quick search here, and it's gonna filter through all of the, hundreds of records that I might potentially have and display them for me on the screen. And then I quickly see the highlighted area where those documents are actually searched and returned for me from QuickTag. So the ability to capture documents either inside of GP or inside of QuickTag, literally at your fingertips. No more running down the hall to pull out a file cabinet and go in and scan, copy something, and then save it to your desktop, and then upload it and email it to somebody. It's all right here at your fingertips with QuickTag. Now let's take a step back and take a look at that transaction again in GP for 1 second. And the idea of getting these documents and getting the transactions created in GP, as you can imagine, and I used to be an accounts payable manager, so I can certainly relate. There's probably a process by which invoices come in and they sit on your desk and they're waiting for you to, do some sort of data entry and associate the document. And if all you need to do is get rid of the paper, you've got the stack of documents on your desk and you're tabbing through and you're doing your data entry, and then you're going to additional, you're tagging the document and moving on to the next. However, so that's the GP capture and integrate story. Now we're going to flip the process on its head and say, let's take a look at the automation, especially around accounts payable, by which this transaction gets created for me automatically because I've done all of the sorting and data entry and queue work in QuickTag instead of in GP. So let me just close this here and we'll come back to this environment here in a second. So the way that process works, if you're looking at having the AP process automated from end to end, is that you would start by, remember we said we can train our vendors to email in whenever possible. Of course, if they mail them in, that's fine too. But we can always tag them and scan them directly into QuickTag. However, if they email them in, it's going to save another step on the accounting side, right? An already very busy, very taxed team because you have a lot going on and you've got to manage a lot of these paper-based processes. So in this case, we are having our vendors go ahead and email in invoices directly into QuickTag. So what I'm showing you now is the QuickTag for GP professional client. And by professional client, we mean specifically the AP manager. You are the AP pro. You know this process inside and out. You know this data inside and out. And you have the experience. Of course, I can tab through these and it's going to show that kind of that same concept. The digital drawer on the left that has received these invoices, a little bit about the date assigned to, and then of course the date of QuickTag receiving these files. So I can scan through very quickly and see the invoices that I'm trying to work. Now, as you can begin this process, I simply right-click and I choose a workflow. Now, in my case, I've got several examples here because there's lots of different scenarios that we demonstrate for people. In your case, there might only be one or two. So we're going to take a look at what we call the invoice approver selection, and we're going to use our template feature to take advantage of really, really quick ease of data entry. And the template feature is really common when you need to, when you're processing invoices for the same vendor on a regular basis. In other words, I receive this invoice from Advanced Office Systems on a monthly basis, and I see it's my $200 one, so that's the one that I want. And I'm going to send it to Mary CFO. That's the approval flow that I want, so good. I can see the invoice on the right-hand side of my display. Chances are in your world, you're going to have GP up on another screen. But let me just come back to the PTE, and why I kept that handy for us is that once I'm in the Pro client, I can see on the left-hand side of my screen the layout, the features, the functionality, the lookups, all of that are exactly like my experience in GP. Another reason that we call it the GP Pro client, because as the AP team, you are in fact, you know, the pros that know GP inside and out, and probably it's going to be very quick for you to learn the same interface in QuickTag to where you're going to kick off the workflow for these invoices that come into your queue. Okay, so because I chose a template, this is an invoice I receive on a regular basis, all of this information is filled in for me. The only thing I need to do is say, well, you know, it's a new date, so I'm going to go ahead and select the new date on the calendar, and I'm going to copy and paste the document number in there so that I can have a unique number. Now, we're doing a lookup on this number for duplicates against the QuickTag database and the GP database. So it'll be very easy for me to detect duplicates and not get one in my system. When I click the GL distributions, again, just like the GP experience, I have the default connectivity. Now, if something was incorrect here or something changed for whatever reason this month, I have a real-time connection to GP. I can simply do an account lookup into my GL structure, change the purchase code if I need to, and move on through the rest of the process. Same thing for the vendors, by the way. If, for example, I chose the template and then realized, oh my gosh, this is the wrong location. I need to get the Advanced Office Systems from, not from Arlington Heights. Maybe there's one in another part of the country that I ordered from instead. I could certainly pick it from the vendor lookup. And that's going to happen in real time. So as soon as I select the vendor, everything is going to populate directly from GP. If I have all this information on the vendor card, it fills in for me right away. And I can see here, I have selected Mary CFO as my approver because she's typically who has to approve all of our office supply purchases. So that's who I'm going to route this invoice to for approval. So now remember, as the AP manager, instead of creating the transaction initially in GP, we're receiving these invoices into our queue in QuickTag, working through them very quickly. Of course, if there's If they're ones that we receive on a regular basis, we'll use the template feature. If they're one-offs every now and again, we'll do the data entry just like we would in GP, tab, tab, tab through, look up if I needed to. All of that connection is real-time in GP. So we're going to put TM Group here in our workflow comments just so that we can follow this through the system. And we're going to say OK to pay. Now, if I needed to save this as a different template, because remember I was going to change the location, I could certainly do that, and then I can just make a note to the template name, and it'll update everything. And then, by the way, if I save an invoice code as a template, that's now available to any of my other QuickTag for GP Pro users as well. So it's not that I can only see my own, I can see any that you or Dale or Brian or anybody else creates in addition to my own, and they can see mine. So it just makes it super efficient for everybody to be able to access all of the templates that are available. And of course, we're building workflow history for audit trail purposes as we go. So this is step one. This document is waiting for me to tag as we saw on the dashboard. And now we're going to go ahead and submit it to Mary CFO. Now let's talk about the different approval scenarios for a moment while we're going to get that invoice over to Mary CFO for approval. And that is, oftentimes you've got approvers who are out on the road, who are maybe traveling quite a bit. And so in that situation, they need to get an email notification because they're not sitting behind their desk to go through these things on a regular basis. But in that case, we can certainly send them an email notification by which they can click a button, hit send, and then that can be that'll be the final approval step for that invoice. For those people, often like the CFO, who are going to be in the office more regularly, they will come to what we call Approval Central, which is a very clean and easy way to get a lot of different document types into a single view for them to quickly take a look at and approve. And you see the notification in the lower right-hand corner. I just got that email approval notification. Okay, so let's take a look at what the Approval Central experience is like. So here's the invoice. I can collapse all of these up if I want to and just take a look at the approver selection. And here's the one that we're working with. I can make this a little bit bigger if it's tough for me to see or whatever. I can make it smaller if I'm on a smaller device. This Approval Central experience is browser independent. It's written in HTML5. It's responsive design. I review these on my tablet all the time, and it's super simple. So the whole idea of being able to access from anywhere is really powerful because a lot of times your approvers are going to be on the road. Maybe they're going to be at a project site. Maybe they're going to be at a customer site. Maybe they're going to be at the airport, whatever the case may be. So if they're on a more smaller device, a more remote experience, they can just as easily look at it in that environment. However, we're going to take a look at email as well. So once they receive this notification that they have an invoice to come in and approve, review and approve, they can either approve, reject. If I reject, of course, I've got to put comments because I want to tell AP that, hey, it's supposed to come out of Tom's budget. How come I'm getting it? Whatever. Or it needs to be delegated. Maybe somebody else is working on a specific project for me, so I'm going to send that over to Brian. He's going to take care of it. If I'm going to do that, then I would be given a next option to route it back to him. In this case, we're going to go ahead and approve it. But before we do, we're going to take a look at that mobile email experience as well. And so I received that email. I'm going to go ahead and open it up. And the invoice, of course, is attached to that message. So I can take a look. Yep, there it is. Advanced Office Systems, $200, our favorite vendor from Fabricam. And we can scroll down. We see here, this is TM Group, OK to pay. That's the one we're working with. And I can get all of the detail about the metadata, the GL codes down here at the bottom. Anything else that was part of that transaction record is going to be visible for me here in this email. And then you can see down at the bottom, I have two simple buttons, approve or reject. If I click approve, it creates the reply email for me. It puts the word approve in. All I need to do is hit send. So it's super easy for that person who, again, is remote or maybe in the field quite a bit and is responsible for approving invoices. And of course, here I can take a look at the GL codes that we coded that invoice for as well. So we'll close that one, minimize email for a second, and we'll come back to our Approval Central experience. We'll go ahead and approve it here. You can see I've got some other things that I could approve here as well, other types of invoices, expense reports, that sort of thing. Expense reports is something, by the way, that we'll take a quick look at if we have a minute here at the end. TM Group approved. So we're going to be done with that. Click approve and off it goes. So what we've just looked at is essentially a two-step process that took me 10 times longer to explain to you because we were walking through every step than if you were doing this yourself. If you were looking at the documents, the invoices on your screen, and you've got GP up on your other screen, you're going to be flying through the, the tabbing experience. Again, when I was an AP manager, I didn't want to take my hands off the keyboard. I didn't want to have to move them from a 10 key or, hitting tab to be able to navigate between the fields. Same experience will apply for you in the GP Pro client. So we did that initial tag step or indexing step, and then we routed that invoice to the CFO for approval. And kind of if you blink, you missed it because it's a pretty seamless experience to just check the boxes. And of course, if you were doing a bunch of them, you would be able to scroll through really quick and go, yep, those are the ones. By the way, I could drill in here and view the GL codes as well. And I get that snapshot of my approval workflow history as well. So I can see who did what status is next, and the status that it's currently on. Of course, this is waiting for Mary CFO to approve. So since we went ahead and approved that invoice, the final step is that payables transaction entry is now going to be created for us here in GP. It's waiting for us to just create it, send it into a batch. So now I went to that final, let me go back so you can see what I did. I went to the additional menu and I went down to view work. So we looked at tag and view and search documents, and now we're looking at that fourth element of the quick tag connector that comes to life inside a GP, and that is the work queue. So this is the final step. The only documents that are going to appear for you here are documents that have gone through a quick tag approval process. By the time they get here, they're approved. But just for kicks, we of course can right click and view the document to make sure that that is in fact the one that we expect to create into a payables transaction entry. We can hover and see the GL codes. We can right click and show all the details if we want to. Move that guy out of the way, see all the information there, and look at all the vendor info, everything that came in from the vendor card, the payment amount, the GL codes down there at the bottom, and who the approver was. So you get a quick glance at all of the information related to that invoice before it goes into a payables batch. And just like if I was in any other Windows application or Microsoft application, I could, multi-select all of these and create them into one batch or a new batch, an existing batch, or whatever. For demo purposes, I'm just going to grab the one that we're working with and create it. And I'm going to select a batch here. We'll put it into the Mary new batch and say yes. And if I selected an existing batch that's going to appear for me of open batches in GP, I could leave it blank and it'll create a new one, or I can type in a new name and it'll create that according to your GP naming conventions as well. So you can create a new batch if you need to as well. So now when I come into my lookup here, save that transaction, maybe, and we'll have the opportunity to go into that batch, find the transaction, and instead of having to do any data entry inside of GP, all of the information will be there for us, including the GL codes and including the document that we just sent through for approval. So where did Mary New go? Give me 1 second to tip. There we are. Okay. So we select the transaction and everything populates for us automatically. As I mentioned, the GL distributions are going to be there for us as well. And when now I come to additional view documents, the advanced office system invoice that we just routed for approval is here forever and always associated with this GP transaction, but also in that drawer inside of QuickTag so that I can search and find and share it. And what's important about that is that my non-GP users who also need to access and share and store documents in our organization can access it as well. So for audit purposes, for example, they come in and once a year they say, hey, here's the check numbers that we want to look at. Here's the vendors we want to look at. All of that's available to them at their fingertips. You give them a temporary login and away they go with looking things up directly inside of QuickTag. So we'll save that transaction and now take a look back over at QuickTag so that we can see what else you can do with this. Because again, we started with capture, being able to tag, upload, drag and drop, scan in documents to associate them with one or many transaction types. We call them drawers. And for each one of those drawers, of course, all of the documents are available to you for immediate access right inside of QuickTag Anywhere. We took a look at the payables transaction entry. Of course, that's the one that's going to be available for us here as well. And there it is. So I don't need to access this information from GP. I can access it directly from QuickTag as well. And of course, I can come here then and say workflow history. And we saw that Mary tagged it. We saw that Mary CFO approved it. And we saw that Mary entered it into the ERP system. So there's where the workflow history will live for any non-GP users or GP users who want to find it here, and then anybody else in the organization who you might need to share it with, auditors or otherwise. Okay, we'll just close that guy. Tiny little X there, sorry. And so the next most common scenario by which people say, okay, we got this AP automation thing down, the next thing that is often on their radar to work on is either HR or expense management. And I'll show you a couple of examples there here too. We'll take a look next at expenses. So in our environment, when we travel, for example, we as many of you probably do, you collect receipts and you come back to the office, and at the end of the week or the month or every couple of weeks, you have to somehow organize them into an expense report so that they can be submitted for approval and then, of course, eventually paid, either reimbursed or corporate card. Well, the way that we do that here at QuickTag, with whether you use some other system to do this, or if you do this on paper, which is how most people start, but we use our own software to do it. And so the way that we do it is that when we travel, we simply take a picture of our receipts with our smartphone and we email them into the system. So just like you can retrain your vendors to email in their invoices, you can take a quick picture, email your receipt, and send it into your QuickTag experience to have report created. So remember I said you can create additional sites and drawers on your own. Well, if you decide to automate something like expense management, we'll create this for you. We'll design the workflow. We'll build the approval matrix, just like we did to send the invoice from Mary to Mary CFO for approval. Many times you're sending things, expense reports, to a department manager or a budget owner or somebody that's responsible for your expenses to approve them, most likely your supervisor or your boss. So in this situation, Quick Expense is one of our sites. And then we've got several drawers here that we can take a look at. I've got credit card statements and I've got expense reports in various stages of review and process and whatnot. And then I've got these receipts down here that I've been sending in from my phone. Every time I get a receipt, I took somebody to lunch, I send in my receipt. I got my hotel checkout bill, I send it in on a receipt. And it's very simple, I email them in. Well, let's just say I got a new one that I need to add. So I come into my receipts drawer and I tag a new document, and it's quite simple. I can just browse out here, or I could upload. But let's just take a look at the experience here when we browse. I've got some receipt examples here that I've sent in. I can simply drag and drop that image over, and it instantly displays for me on the right-hand side. Now, the value of this is that much like the experience we just looked at for GP AP users that are doing that initial step of indexing an invoice that's got to be routed for approval, now I'm the user who's traveling, who's maybe doing an event or a customer visit or a trade show or whatever the case may be, working on a project, something that I'm either going to be charging to my corporate card or charging to my personal card and getting reimbursed for. I've sent all these receipts in. I can simply look at that date. I can see, maybe it was yesterday or last week. I can pick the date of it. I can put in a description here. Clearly I was thirsty, needed to get some water there. I can pick a department, and on the front end of this list, you'll see examples like accounting and admin and engineering and services and sales or whatever. On the back end of this, we're going to map them to the GL code, just like we did with the invoice selection. However, we're going to work with you, of course, to create what those GL mappings are based on your department, your expense type, and whatnot. In this case, it's we put it in the meal. We're going to say it's reimbursable, and we can just manually enter the line amount there and submit it. So now I have tagged the receipt, and again, it probably took me 5 times longer because I was explaining each step of the way as I was showing you this. But the idea is that you send in your receipts. You've got 3, 10, 5, whatever it is at the end of that week or the end of every month, whenever it is that you're submitting these. And you then need to build your expense report based on the receipts that you've been sending in over time. So then you come up to your expense reports. Let me just come over to my favorites so we don't have to look at all those extra ones. And here's one that is pending here. We can just do a quick refresh. So this is one that I was working on earlier today. Here's one that's pending. Here's one that's pending. We'll go ahead and create a new one based on what we just submitted. We just tag an expense report and we put in the date. We'll just say it was February 1 to February 22nd because we know that we added the date just a moment ago. And we'll say Mary Feb reimbursable 2018 new, just so that it isn't duplicate with something else I've already created. Now I don't need to drag and drop anything here. It's going to create it for me. So I'm going to select, oh, whoops, it's reimbursable, got to tell it that. Now, if I was doing this on behalf of someone, this is a real common experience that we see with a lot of our clients. Say that, a group of sales organization or a group in a professional services organization has an admin or somebody back in the home office that manages their expenses for them. Today, they're the ones that when they come back from a trip, they drop all the receipts on their desk and they go, here you go, wipe their hands and off they're done. Well, in this world, now they can email those receipts into that person. They can be collecting them on your behalf or on the behalf of others. And they simply select from this drop-down list who they're creating the expense report for. So I have the authority to do Mary Department Manager. In this case, I'm going to do it myself, but I could have an admin person or somebody else in the organization who could create my expense report for me. So that's a very common relationship that we work with. Once I create this expense report, it's going to take a second to go out and look for any receipts that fell into that time period, look for any that have the payment type of reimbursable, and it's going to build that expense report. While it's doing that, let me explain a little bit about how it works if you're using a corporate card. Well, if you're using a corporate card, your company is then going to get that statement at the end of the month. They download the statement from Amex or whatever their bank is, upload it into QuickTag, and QuickTag will then go look for any receipts that match to those transactions. Makes it super simple from the accounting reconciliation piece, and then all the user, me, the person who did the traveling, needs to do is go in and say what those receipts were for, lunch with a client, or it was a project or whatever. And then once I have that data entry in, accounting can now then grab all of those that are approved and pay the, competently pay the, their Amex statement so that they know that everything is accounted for. Okay, so here's the expense report that that we just created. We ran it from February 1st to the 22nd, and we can take a look at it if we want to. Of course, QuickTag built this report for me. Here's all the receipts that I had entered, and I didn't need to go do anything in the Excel world. QuickTag did that for me, and I just come over here and I do a quick edit to say, all right, from pending, now I'm done with it because it sent me this so that I can take a look and make sure that it's good. And I say, yep, it's good. I submit it, and then I'm done with it as the user. So what happens next is that gets routed to Mary Department Manager in this case, much like you would route your expense reports to whoever it is that approves them, and much like the invoice approval experience, QuickTag will do the routing for you based on who you tell us needs to approve things. And again, approval matrix can be set up based on the type of user or a user group. It can be done based on dollar amount. That's a real common scenario that we see. Maybe I have an approval up to $1,000. My boss maybe has 10,000, and his or her boss might have, unlimited. So all of the different variables that you can associate with approval are something that we'll build into your workflow so that you don't have to think about it. And you don't have to wonder where that piece of paper is then sitting, because you can take a quick look at the workflow. Now, just like that invoice approval, you see there, I got that email notification. So let's take a look at that. My email notification says, well, Quick Expense says, here's an expense report that needs your approval. And again, there's all the information. There's Mary. Here's the line items. And if I then open that, I'm going to see the spreadsheet and take a look at that before I click approve. So I can see all the detail there. Go ahead and close the email. We'll come back to Approval Central. And again, I can approve or reject here, and I can see the workflow history of who did what when. Once I click approval here, say expenses are approved. Comments here are optional, so we don't have to enter them, but makes it easy for us to track it in the workflow steps. Once that's done, now that payment comes to my payables transaction entry in my additional work queue for QuickTag that's available for me to process just invoice would be. So I can see here I've got ones for Mary Miller, I've got ones for Amex, I've got one for Danny. So all of these payments, then the PTE is going to get created exactly the way that the invoice would. And at that point, then the GL distributions would also be there because we've done that mapping for you from, lunch and meals and travel to what the actual purge codes should be and what the pay code should be. So that's just another example of automation. And then there's just one final step I want to show you here, and that is a common scenario that many of our customers like to tie a lot of related documents together around a common view. And what I mean by that is, in this case, HR files, for example. Just like outside of accounting's offices, there's probably lots and lots of file cabinets with drawers and folders and documents that are spread across lots of different departments. Well, it's often common for that experience to be the case in HR as well. And in the HR world, what we see is that there's a benefits folder, and there's time off folders, and there's compliance folders and training folders and all of these sorts of things. And sometimes as a manager, you need to see all of those files that are related to each other in a single view. So I can take a look at, say, active employee Mary Miller and view all of her related files. I can see that application for employment was the first file, the master document, as it were. And I can right-click and open that here. It's going to display it right here on the right-hand side. You get the idea, drawers or structure on the left, list of the documents in the center, and then display of the document itself on the right-hand side. So what I'm showing you here is an example of how you could bring vendor files, employee files, partner files, legal contracts, all sorts of related documents into a single view around a common document type. So again, in this case, I've got HR, where I see my leave of absence drawer has a couple of documents. My benefit information has several documents. My compliance document, et cetera, et cetera. And I can see all of them in a single view. So case management is a very common extension of QuickTag. Oh, by the way, there may or may not be workflow associated with any of these documents that are in a case. There could be, but there don't have to be. This can just be an element of capture that's extended to have the files organized for you by document type and created in this view that we call a case. So really an extension of the capture platform. So remember, capture, integrate, and automate. And we can automate the approval for literally any document. Of course, if it's a payment that you need to have ultimately create a payment transaction entry in GP, that's very simple use case for invoices and expenses. If there's any other sort of document, then of course those can reside here in QuickTag with the same level of audit trail workflow visibility as you would get in the environment with QuickTag for GP and the invoice experience that we looked at. Okay, so with that, I'm going to hop back over to my other screen here again. And if you've got questions about any of that, I know we went through a lot of that information, but if you've got questions about any of that, we'd be happy to set up a follow-up where we can kind of talk through your needs and your processes a lot more specifically and outline how our solution could potentially apply to that. So just a few recap slides here, and that is that the embedded nature of QuickTag inside of GP is the most complete of anything else that I would challenge you to find. And that is because we were the first to integrate with Dynamics years ago, and we go very deeply across the 79 forms inside of GP, 9 different modules. Again, we don't take up any resources inside of GP, but we make it accessible to GP and non-GP users, any document. So we've taken a look at the work queue, we've taken a look at the process flow, we took a look at the pro client, which is step 1 for the accounts payable user, and then of course we ultimately created those transactions inside of GP. The reason I show you this slide where I say automate any process, remember capture, integrate, automate. Automate is that final process that you can use for literally any type of process. We have customers who use this initially often for accounts payable, just like we looked at together. And then, they'll extend off into HR or expense management, that sort of thing. And then they look at vendor onboarding, sometimes contractor onboarding, sales order process automation, anything where there is a document related. We have a customer who uses, who has about 3,000 independent contractors that they have to onboard on a monthly basis, usually about 400 or 500 at a time, sometimes 600 at a time. So on a monthly basis, they need to gather 30 different documents for each one of these independent contractors. We configured a solution by which each one of those people email their documents in, their driver's license, their certification for training, their insurance, all of those sorts of things. And we build a case around them, just like the last thing that we looked at together. So all of those documents are centrally stored in QuickTag, easily accessible for those people who need to see them, and of course manage them over time. So literally, if there's a document in your business that needs visibility and some sort of controls and process flow, QuickTag can probably help you with that. And our quick family snapshot, I like to call it, and this is to kind of help you understand that there isn't a one-size-fits-all. There isn't a just small companies, just big companies, just middle-sized companies. It's a little bit like Goldilocks. They can all fit in sort of the solution there. And one thing that these companies, much like your organization might be experiencing, is that they all were challenged at some point by paper. Remember at the beginning we talked about just how cumbersome and how expensive it can be to manage paper in your organization. Well, all of these organizations experienced the same thing, and they needed to, at some level, either capture the document to make the paper go away, integrate it into their ERP system, and or automate, or some combination thereof, so that they would have a complete automated process and visibility at every step. A few just highlights, I'll call them, about ImageTag. I mentioned that we were the first to integrate with Microsoft Dynamics ERP systems. We do that with GP, SL, NAV, and AX across multiple different modules and many, many different forms and screens. And just like in those environments, just like what I showed you in GP, drawers and sites get automatically created accordingly for right within QuickTag as well. We've been around for 21 years. We were founded in 1997, and over our 21-year experience, we have more than 120,000 business users around the globe in many different industries, as I highlighted on the screen prior. So with that, I would like to thank you all for your time today. And we are just at the top of the hour here in just a couple of minutes. But if we do have any questions that have come in, Allie, now would be a good time for us to try and address those.
Thank you so much, Mary. It doesn't look like we have any questions right now, but I was thinking we could give them a couple minutes in case they think of any. They could type them in really quick.
Sure, that would be great. While you're thinking about that, I'll kind of address a couple that we often get, and one is around implementation time. Because I described for you a couple of different scenarios, there's certainly the capture the documents, integrate directly inside a GP. We often get asked, well, how long does it take? And there's kind of two answers to that. And one is that if you're looking to just make the paper go away, not that that's any small feat, but if you're looking for the capture solution with QuickTag, we can have that up and running within a week, typically 3 to 4 business days. And sometimes it takes longer to just manage the calendars than it actually does to get the process implemented, the solution implemented. So very quick, very easy for people to get off the ground with capture. If you're looking to automate one of the processes that we looked at or something else, the automation process can take anywhere from 45, 60, 90 days, depending on the complexity and who all needs to be involved and the number of users and the types of users and the type of the workflow and that sort of thing. Even that we've done as quickly in as less than 20 days. However, that took really, really dedicated time, for your IT staff and your accounting staff to say, yes, this is what we need. Yes, we're good to go. Yes, we're going to be available for testing and training as soon as it's available. So all kind of stars need to align for that to happen in less than 30 days, but we have done it. So it's really about your deadline, your project goals, and the amount of time that you can kind of dedicate to this during the course of the implementation process. So that's a question that we often get. Did that give people enough time to think about other things they might like to ask at this stage?
Yep, we have 2 questions. The first one being, can you search for invoices by check number?
Yes, in fact, we have a payment approval process that comes standard with our AP solution. And what we do in that situation is that we route the check batch report from GP for approval, and whoever is going to issue that final approval for those payments will get a check batch report, the ability to drill down to see what checks they are issued for, and the related invoices. So just like I showed you in Approval Central, the ability to view expense reports and invoices and all of that, you can do that at the check batch and the payment level. That's included in the AP solution, AP automation solution at no extra charge. So it's real easy, and you can then search by any criteria that's related, the check number, the invoice number, any content within those invoices, and have it all available for you in QuickTag as well. Yeah, great question.
Awesome. We have one more. For AP, if they have a batch of 20 invoices, do they have to be scanned one by one, or is there an easier way to attach them to the transaction?
So if they are paper, what we would do in that situation is you would put a QuickTag barcode label on the first page of each one of those so that you can do a batch scan of everything all at one time, because the barcode serves as a unique identifier. Again, this is for paper. A unique identifier and a page separator. So if I've got 20 invoices and I stick a QuickTag label on the first page of each one of those invoices, I can then walk over to my scanner, scan a QuickTag, and they're going to come into my work queue as individual documents, but it will recognize them all as unique files. So batch scan is certainly an option. And if they're emailed, you could email 1, 5, 10, 20, all on the same email, and same thing would apply. They would come into your work queue as individual documents. Same thing with receipts. It'll separate them for you and identify each attachment as its own unique file. So absolutely, batch scanning is an option.
All right. Well, thank you so much again, Mary. That was our last question. Thank you and ImageTag for doing this presentation. And once again, if you guys have any further questions, I will be following up with all of you, and I'll be sending you the recording of it. So thank you very much, Mary, and I hope everybody has a great day.
Thanks, Allie. We appreciate being here. Have a great day.
You too.